Hello there. For all you parents out there who might want your child to master financial literacy, you're going to want to know how to teach them. Maybe you can even parlay that into a business on your own, becoming a financial literacy teacher. Well, how do you go about doing that? That's what we'll be covering in this video. In this video today, we're going to be discussing the role that financial literacy has in economic empowerment. We also will need to be talking to you about the skills that you need to develop to teach it effectively. What qualifications do you really need to have? What resources would be available to you? And then what are those steps that you need to do to get this started? So all that and more is what we'll be covering next. Financial literacy is empowering. It empowers you because you begin to understand the language of money, how money works, how it operates, and we cannot live effectively in any sort of modern day society without truly understanding that. People who don't master that tend to run into problems with debt and have difficulties saving for their retirement and enjoying certain privileges that come with wealth creation. And I've often repeated over and over is that if you find a profession, work that you enjoy, even if it's not something that you necessarily will earn high income with, you can actually, by having a good understanding of financial literacy, better the second half of your life financially than even during your working years. So let me kind of illustrate this. I'll talk briefly about my middle son, who we knew college really wasn't going to be for him. Just, you're not going to try to pound a square peg into a round hole. And he got a job working for the city, working in the Parks Rec department, which he really enjoys. He gets paid reasonably well. But he's not going to ever get real high income earner based on his education experiences. But when we begin to understand financial literacy and teach him some of these things about living within your means, setting goals, budgeting, paying yourself first, so making sure you're putting things away for your retirement, how to invest properly, developing some second streams of income, how can you do that? Implementing these things will mean that when he retires, he has a very good chance of being able to earn more in retirement than he does now. Now, yes, there's going to be lots of things that come along, marriage, kids, buying a house, all those things that can really come around and make things tight for a while. But when you understand how money works and how to properly manage your mindset around that, you make it through those times, and in the end, you're very well off financially. So becoming a financial literacy teacher where you might teach other people other than just like your own children, that there's certain qualifications you'd want to have. You really need to understand some basics, right? Some understanding of banking and investing and budgeting and various apps that are out there. You want to be knowledgeable in these areas. Now, you can get certified, which is very helpful if you actually want to do this as a business, to have a certification as a financial literacy expert, or even a fiduciary, who is different than a financial advisor. They actually don't give like recommendations specifically on or sell investment assets and things, but they are about guiding you in managing your money, making some recommendations, showing you how to budget money, all that. So those are some options available to you, but you need to understand debt, how debt works, interest rates. You need to understand some basics around investing. You need to understand basics around income and no, what am I doing? I didn't like any of that. Didn't like where I was going with any of that. Qualifications. All right, here we go. All right, if you want to do this beyond just teaching your own children, understanding how to teach is helpful, right? Now, yeah, I I went through 4 years of college and then another year to get a teaching license, and then a little bit more for getting my master's degree. And to be perfectly blunt and honest, I learned a lot more about teaching from some workshops and seminars and things I took than I ever did from any one university course that I had. That's the honest to God truth. And then, of course, you learn a lot by doing it, by getting out there and doing that. So that aspect is important, and you can find lots of workshops and trainings taught by teachers that can be very valuable. That's aside from the financial part, right? Qualification for the financial part is having a basic understanding of some economics and financial literacy language and understanding of interest rates and banking and investing. Depending on the extent of the training or the education that you want to offer, would depend on how extensive that background is, right? We often think about investing, and there's a whole lot to that, that the more you want to get into that piece, that very small piece of financial literacy, the more training, the more certifications that you would want to have, even going back to school, right? To get some of those. I do need to kind of tell you a little story about my experience, though, so that you can kind of wrap your head around what really gives a qualification. So the last course I needed to take in order to get my bachelor's degree, I didn't need to take it. I wanted to take it. I was an economics major, and this was on investing. So one portion of financial literacy. It was being taught by a local professional in the industry, financial expert in investing. And he went by a textbook, and he taught from a textbook. No practical exercises for us to do. It was boring. It was long, tedious, and I don't remember anything I got during that course. It was awful. He didn't really know how to teach, and it was too technical or practical. So that little lesson is something I would want you to wrap your head around, is when you teach it, you got to make it real. All right, so you kind of got the background. You've got some ideas about how you need to teach it. Let me give you some kind of principles here, particularly for this particular category. Part of it will depend on the age you want to teach, right? So with your own kids, you might be teaching some young kids. The easiest way to do that is really make it real by using allowances and some basic money skills, right? Tracking the money, where they're going to go, how they spend it, little simple, old-fashioned ledger kind of stuff. You don't need lots of apps. Teach them the old-fashioned way to begin with, right? That can be very powerful. Use some games, a lot of game playing at the elementary school level. Now, if you're going to be teaching other people, yeah, I imagine it'd be more middle, high school, maybe even a little bit older than that. And again, we want to make this real. You want to teach with some stories, but the most important thing is you teach a concept and then think of ways for them to actually apply it in their own life for real, right? So if you are teaching people who are working, fantastic. Let's take what they are doing, what they're earning, and each concept you take, they're going to do it in their own world, in their own life, right? They can begin right there in the class that you're doing, whether it's virtually or in person. You want to have them begin applying it. That's kind of their homework. You want to get creative. You want to think about how to make it interesting, have discussions about the problems, the challenges they were having, how to solve those. All of those things are what you really need to be able to do to effectively teach this to people. Make it real, make it interesting and fun, make it practical for them. One thing I would strongly suggest is you look at some books that are not textbooks. And I say that because there are some good books out there, like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a classic book, Think and Grow Rich, which is another classic book, that look at wealth creation and financial understanding a little bit differently than what is traditional. but it's people who wrote these who did it, right? So if you look at some of these books out there, there's several. I have some in my library. Uh, Look for those too and try to read those. Some of these ones that aren't necessarily written by the professors of finance or what have you. Those can tend to be a little too uh, not not real enough. And what I mean by that was some of the people who wrote these other ones earned their wealth and are showing you and writing about how they did it. And that to me is much more real than somebody who just studied it. All right, if that makes sense to you. But I would definitely look at some of those kind of books out there about breaking the financial myths. And Rich Dad Poor Dad's a great one, and that's a classic. So I definitely check out a book like that. All right, so here's some steps for you. One, take an inventory of what you know and what you don't know. Then, what you don't know, begin to fill in that gap. So go out there, try to find the workshops, the books that you can read to fill in that gap of knowledge. Check out what you might need to do, whether there's any sort of licensing in your particular state or part of the country that you might need to try to figure that out. Those would be your first steps to kind of initiate this whole process of becoming a financial literacy teacher. All right, that wraps up another video. Important topic. The more people we can have teaching financial literacy, the better, especially if you're a parent with your own kids. So I hope this was helpful. I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, check out other videos. In particular, you might want to check out the video, How Does Financial Literacy Contribute to Economic Empowerment? Check that video out and come back and watch some others.